Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 267 on the 2nd of December 2013. Richard Saunders with you from downtown Sydney. I'm outside the State Library where I've come to finish off this week's show. This week's show is running a little bit late because a report from Dr Rachie had to come halfway around the world. In fact, she's in Qatar in the Middle East attending a very important conference. She'll tell you all about that coming up very soon. Anyway, what else do we have on this week's show? News from the Australian Skeptics Convention. The convention went off very well, got off to a very good start with James Randi making an appearance on the big screen live from Florida. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to play you James Randi's message to us. Sort of a bit complicated. It's in two parts, or it sounds a bit different because half's recorded straight off the feed and half is recorded live. These things happen, folks. These things happen. Nevertheless, I'll play a clip of James Randi's address to our national convention, the Australian Skeptics National Convention. After that, news of the awards, the annual awards we give at the Australian Skeptics Convention, including Skeptic of the Year, lifetime memberships, the Fred Thornett Prize, and the Bent Spoon Awards. That's coming up a bit later on. And following that, yes, it's Dr Rachie reports with news about her conference in the Middle East, talking about blue-green algae, very important. And then we'll play a clip from Lateline, the ABC show Lateline, where Dr Rachie was a guest discussing the fact that the Australian Vaccination Network have been ordered to change their name. Very good news indeed. We'll be playing that clip, and Dr Rachie will be commenting on that. After that, it's a week in science from our good friends at the Royal Institution of Australia, www.riaus.org.au. I think I said the right number of W's there. And following the week in science with Dr. Paul Willis, Maynard spooky action from the convention, and those people who chipped in to help get Maynard there, you can sit back and enjoy that little bit more, I think. Maynard's going to be speaking to Ketan Joshi about neuroscience, conspiracy theories, wind turbines, renewable energies, and the perils of online arguments. After that, Maynard will chat to some more delegates and people at the convention and round off his reports this week with an interview with Graham Wilson, a researcher who's going to talk about a very famous Australian legend myth, a man called Simpson, who was at Gallipoli, the World War I campaign, who was a stretcher bearer with a donkey. Anyway, lots of myths and legends have grown up around this man, so Graham Wilson will be discussing that. Well, as the traffic roars down Macquarie Street, where I am at the moment, I'm going to run back inside the library, probably grab a nice cappuccino on the way, and finish off this week's episode of the Skeptic Zone.
Greetings. I can't tell you how much I like to be with you all you giddy bunch in Canberra right now. I've always taken great joy in my visits to Australia, and I feel that I have a strong connection to all of my friends down under. And although Dick Smith and Barry Williams won't be among you at this conference, I believe I'm picking up their very strong vibrations from somewhere. I understand that this year you're concentrating on conspiracy theories. That's a favorite subject with me. And I should mention that Chapter 25, titled The Whole World's Out to Get Me, of my forthcoming 11th book, A Magician in the Laboratory, will deal with this very bizarre matter. At 85 years of age now, I've managed to stay around, though with a certain amount of difficulty. I certainly just recovered from a medical crisis about which you need not know, but I assure you that I did it without recourse to aromatherapy, acupuncture, homeopathy, a power balance bracelet, or even a bit of chatting. Folks, we skeptics all know that countless citizens of both our countries resort to useless and dangerous means to solve their problems daily. Such conferences as I now address are very effective means to fight these negative elements in our culture. While you're here, I urge you, make new friends, ask questions, share your knowledge and experience of those you meet, and it will make you a better thinker. Yes, it can work for you. I hope that your conference is a great success, that all attendees will be able to garner fresh hope and ambition from their participation. And I ask that you accept my assurance that rationality and plain common sense are more and more in evidence day by day, both here in the USA and on your exciting continent. Please learn and celebrate from having been in Canberra for this event. I dearly wish that I could also be there, but if I don't receive an invitation to invade your shores in 2014, I'll be very disappointed, and you know what that can mean. I'm sure that most of you will share with me the wonder and amazement that we are now able to communicate in this fashion, easily transmitting and greeting over the 9,472 miles, that's 15,245 kilometers, or kilometers, that separate us. But it's not the distance between us that's important, it's the camaraderie and joy that we all share. Here in the USA, the James Randi Educational Foundation holds an annual conference called the Amazing Meeting, and we've always had a good representation from Australia on those occasions. Something I must show you, something that arrived in the mail just 2 days ago. I find this rather interesting. It's from the Neptune Society. Now, the Neptune Society, you should know, is an organization that offers to cremate you and spread your ashes at sea after you die. I'm a little worried about something here I see on the front of the envelope. I'm sure you can't read it, but it says, free prepaid cremation. Details inside. I don't know whether I want to know those details, frankly, and I'm not about to volunteer my body for this particular purpose. I am told that perhaps they might have some questions for me. Oh, by the way, this is the Randy doll, of course, who's equipped appropriately, as you can see, made from a doll of Charles Darwin, but I trimmed it and a few things like that.
A highlight of every Australian Skeptics National Convention are the awards. And this year, the awards were as follows. Skeptic of the Year was awarded to Professor Simon Chapman. Professor Chapman from the University of New South Wales has undertaken extensive research into the media's communication of public health issues and demonstrated great concern through his efforts to improve the public understanding of important issues, including tobacco control, alcohol, swine flu, anti-vaccination beliefs, and more. Congratulations, Professor Simon Chapman. The Fred Thornett Award went to Sonia Pemberton, the producer of the documentary Jabbed, all about the pros and cons of vaccination from a realistic scientific point of view. Life memberships went to Colin Groves, the longtime Canberra skeptic, and the health campaigner, Dr. Ken Harvey. Congratulations to them all. And now a recording of the awarding of the Bent Spoon Prize at the dinner, and it was a Doctor Who themed dinner, great fun, there were Daleks everywhere, where I was very pleased to award this year's Bent Spoon. Present the annual Bent Spoon Award as being wafted around the room to your pleasure by Dr. Chrissy Wilson. The wood for the blimp there comes from Noah's Ark, so we're told. The spoon was meant by a psychic, so we're told. past winners of this least sought after award, amongst the past winners, was the free energy company Lutech some years ago. Jazz Maheen, who said that she could live on air and water alone. She couldn't. Meryl Dory from the Australian Vaccination Network won the Ben Spoon Award a few years ago. I don't think that's working applause, I'm not sure. The ABC Television has won the award 3 times for the dismal program Second Opinion about alternative medicine, for the New Inventors program, which uncritically showcased a pool cleaning device based on nonsense, and for showing a program called The Psychic Investigators. We've also had people like Fran Sheffield from Homeopathy Plus with the Ben Spoon Award, a company called Gentle Heal, who are promoting homeopathic vaccinations, and even Peter Brock for his energy fuel polarizer. This year we had an interesting group of nominations. I was quite interested somewhat when I looked over the nominations as they were coming in and saw Tony Abbott's name. And according to his Minister for Science, we also have various anti-fluoride councils, people being mentioned. Did anyone see the news the other night? Byron Shire councillors voted to hold hands and not have fluoride in their water supply. The television ABC have got to look in again with their Catalyst show, which is a great hit. The recent episode, 2-part episode about heart health and not a good effort, we thought. Someone who was mentioned today, I think, Sarah Laurie from the Warburg Foundation, wind turbines. In the end, after much thought and toing and throwing amongst various committees who voted on this, I'm sort of pleased, never quite pleased to announce the Ben Spoon winner. However, the joint winners, the Chiropractors Association of Australia and the Chiropractic Board of Australia are the joint winners for the 2013 Australian Skeptics Ben Spoon Award. The CAA is the largest body of professional chiropractors in Australia, and the CBA, the board, is the body that regulates the industry by developing standards, codes and guidelines. But while both bodies make statements that discourage or prohibit certain unfounded claims about efficacy, particularly on the wide range of health conditions that chiropractors can supposedly treat, many practitioners still continue to state they can treat such conditions as asthma, ADHD, bedwetting, and even ear infections.
Hey, this is Jay Novella from the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast. Did you know that there are thousands of skeptical reports, interviews, and investigations going back to 1981, free to download? Just visit www.skeptics.com.au. Click the publications link and enjoy almost every back issue of The Skeptic, the journal from Australian Skeptics. You can also subscribe online and get the latest digital or hard copy of this, the world's second oldest skeptical magazine. That's www.skeptics.com.au or just Google Australian Skeptics.
Now it's time for Dr Rachie Reports with Dr Rachael Dunlop.
Hello listeners, and welcome to this week's special edition of Dr Rachie Reports, coming to you from the city of Doha in Qatar in the Middle East. And I'm currently sitting in my hotel room on the 9th floor, looking out across the city of Doha. It's about 3:30 in the afternoon, and it is a Sunday here. But Sunday is the first day of the working week in Doha, so the traffic is quite heavy. There are lots of people out and about, and it's very busy. Now, I'm in Qatar, in Doha specifically, for a conference about toxins in desert environments. And this work stems from the work I do back in Sydney, which is looking at a toxin found in blue-green algae, which regular listeners have heard about many times before, so I won't bore you. But the reason I'm in the desert this week is because there is also a link between the toxin in blue-green algae that we've discussed before and an increased incidence of ALS or motor neurone disease in soldiers that returned from the Gulf War in 1991-1992. Now, in Doha itself, there is a very large military base in the country, and this was where the American soldiers were based when they flew into Kuwait during the Operation Sandstorm that people may remember lasted for a very short period of time, about 6 months. So the funny thing about coming into Doha is you drive into the Middle East. It's what you would expect. It's very dusty. But then every so often you'll see a Burger King, a Chili's, a Wendy's. American chains, fast food chains, have popped up here because they were supporting or feeding the soldiers that were in the military base here. And in fact, the military base is still here. But one of the things that has been noted, and it's been published twice now, is that these soldiers had a higher incidence of motor neurone disease. Now, I'm here because a colleague of mine has been sampling the desert crusts of Qatar, and what she has ascertained is that the desert crusts also contain blue-green algae, and you guessed it, in this algae is this toxin BMAA. Now, it may surprise you to know that algae can grow in the desert, but remember, cyanobacteria as a species is about 3.5 billion years old, so it's adapted to grow just about everywhere. Last time I was here in February this year, we actually went out to the desert and we watered the crust of the desert and we waited, and about 5 minutes later it began to turn green as the algae woke up from its hibernation and began to photosynthesize and turn the green colour which is associated with it. But that's actually not what I was going to talk to you about today. This week, I'm going to play a report that I was in on Monday on ABC TV's television program called Lateline. And this was in response to the decision that was handed down against the Australian Vaccination Network last week. Now, this concerns the order put forth by the Administrative Decisions Tribunal that the AVN had to change their name. Now, this was originally put down several months ago, but the AVN appealed the decision, and the appeal was heard last Monday in Sydney. Now, the decision was upheld, and the judge said that the AVN will have to go forth and change its name. And the reason the judge gave for that was because they deemed that the AVN's name was misleading when you looked at actually what they did as an organisation. Now, I've since seen some commentary from people around this issue saying, well, if that's the case, then why doesn't the Cancer Council have to change their name? Well, in fact, Meryl Dorey said that. She said it infers that they like cancer, which I think is a little bit tenuous and maybe drawing a slightly long bow. But the issue here is specifically because the Australian Vaccination Network is an incorporated association. Now, this is a whole lot of official-sounding jargon, but basically what it means is that there are rules that apply for these kind of organisations. And one of those rules is that your name has to accurately represent what your activities are. And because the AVN is an incorporated association and they haven't abided by this part of the rule, the judge can actually say to them, you have to change your name. Now, of course, they have a couple of options here. They can opt to not change their name, even though the judge has ordered them to do that. However, the penalties for that, since they are an incorporated association, are that they can actually be closed down. As you'll hear more in the report from Lateline tonight, they're not happy about this, obviously. So before we cross to that audio, I just want to make the point that this habit of anti-vax organisations adopting names that don't sound like what they actually do is used by most of these organisations across the world. When you look at the Vaccine Information Network in New Zealand, when you look at the Vaccine Information Service in Queensland, when you look at the ones in America, none of them use names that accurately reflect what they do. However, what is unique about this is we are the first people in the world, in Australia, to force this anti-vaccination network to change their name to something that more accurately reflects what they do. And for this, I think everyone who worked on this should be congratulated, because this is a big win.
Australia's most prominent anti-vaccination organisation has been ordered to change its name in a landmark ruling by the New South Wales Administrative Decisions Tribunal. The Department of Fair Trading had already declared the Australian Vaccination Network's name was misleading, given the organisation's stance against vaccination, but the group had appealed that decision. The tribunal upheld the ruling, which will force the AVN to now come up with a new name. That name must be approved by the Fair Trading Minister. Steve Kinane reports.
The Australian Vaccination Network needs to find a new name. The Administrative Decisions Tribunal says its name has been misleading people into thinking the organisation provides comprehensive information about vaccination.
Obviously, I'm very pleased because we've been fighting against the misinformation perpetuated by the AVN for many years now, since 2009. And this is a big win for public health in New South Wales, and also for parents and for babies who are affected by vaccine-preventable diseases.
Dr Rachael Dunlop is a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Technology, Sydney, and a member of Stop the AVN.
It was taken to the ADT because the name Australian Vaccination Network sounds fairly innocuous. It sounds like they might be providing reliable information about vaccination. In fact, they're not. They're purely anti-vaccination.
In a previous interview with Lateline, AVN spokeswoman Maynard admitted her website did not provide information that was in favour of vaccination.
Our position is to provide information that balances the information that parents get from their doctors and from the government. We have never said that we provide both sides of the story. We don't.
In response to today's decision, Meryl Dorey claimed she was a victim of hate groups and vested interests.
Many of those people either work in the pharmaceutical industry or work for the pharmaceutical industry. And it is apparent that some of these people are quite close with certain members of the New South Wales Parliament and of our government. So, you can call it a conspiracy theory, but I say that there is evidence.
Meryl Dorey is a supporter of the discredited British researcher Andrew Wakefield. The former doctor claimed there was a link between autism and the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. He was subsequently struck off the medical register after being found guilty of serious professional misconduct and acting dishonestly and irresponsibly in his published research. Now the AVN has to decide whether they will accept the decision of the Administrative Decisions Tribunal.
If the AVN decides not to change their name, if they refuse to change their name, that the Administrative Decisions Tribunal can actually seize their assets and close them down.
Meryl Dorey says the AVN has yet to decide what they'll do next.
We don't know. This decision only came out today. We have to go to our members and speak with them.
We may not have heard the last word from the AVN. Steve Kinane, Lateline.
So from Doha in Qatar, this has been Dr Rachie Reports.
Hey fellow skeptics, I'm Trent, the co-host of a podcast called Seeds of Doubt and creator of a new project called Dropfox. Dropfox is dedicated to providing new music for your radio show or podcast, and to help support your cause through the sound waves. The song you're listening to is called Keep Looking Up, and can be heard on the podcast Oddments by College of Curiosity. If you need some new music, check me out. Facebook.com/Dropfox. That's DROPFOX.
Welcome to A Week in Science from RiAus, bringing you the science news you need to know. This week in science, we saw stealthy seahorses, copying competitors and anticipating pain. A novel method has been developed that allows a wheelchair to be controlled with just the flick of a tongue. It uses a small tongue ring which alters the magnetic field around the user's mouth whenever they move it. Changes in the magnetic field are picked up by sensors in a headset, allowing the tongue commands to be sent to various devices. Users, including people paralysed from the neck down, took just 30 minutes to gain control of the system, using their tongue to play video games, drive a wheelchair through an obstacle course, and dial phone numbers. They're hardly the thoroughbreds of the ocean, but now we know how seahorses approach their prey with stealth. The notoriously slow swimmers hunt prey which normally evade predators by detecting the slightest disturbance in the water. Seahorses have a spring-like neck which allows them to suddenly launch at prey, but they still need to get close enough to mount this attack. Researchers found that the unique shape of the seahorse head, particularly their snout, allows them to move through the water with extremely little disturbance, meaning that prey aren't aware of their presence until it's too late. You're listening to A Week in Science from RiAus. And now, 4 science headlines in 30 seconds. The maximum dose of many dissolvable medicines, including paracetamol, contain more salt than our recommended daily intake. The physical structure of a dragonfly's wing has inspired a new antibacterial surface made of black silicon. People instinctively copy others in competitive situations, even when it results in a worse performance. And the dread of anticipating pain may actually exceed the pain itself. So you may be better off just getting it over and done with. With just a few weeks left to Christmas, we have the perfect present for the science fan in your life. Up until December 20, you can buy an RiAus membership and get a gift membership for free. There are lots of benefits to joining our community, including free or discounted tickets to events, a digital subscription to Cosmos magazine, and more. Go to the Get Involved section of the RiAus website for details. That's it for this A Week in Science. I'll catch you next week.
In a world where the truth is a matter of opinion, where messages are received from beyond the grave, and reason is sidelined for magical thinking, only 3 men stand between the truth and a postmodernist abyss.
What date is it? 7th, 8th? 7th, 8th?
This is impressive.
Are these artist impressions?
They're not. They're photographs of Chinese lanterns.
It's not. It's not.
We are not well researched.
Yeah, because
good God, we're full.
We don't discuss cryptozoology on this show very often because we don't know anything about it.
That's true. That is true.
The price gets lower and lower and lower, and then he hits a ceiling.
It's a ceiling from the room below.
Skeptics with a K from the Merseyside Skeptic Society. Find us on iTunes, or don't.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
We're here in the green room of the CSIRO, and it's called the green room because my denim is made from completely 100% renewable pants. I'm here with a man who has been talking wind to me. What's your name, sir?
Qatar Joshi.
Well, look, you have been telling me some stuff I didn't even know. You've been getting to the bottom of some great conspiracies here, and I know you've got a talk coming up this afternoon, so...
I'm quite nervous, yes.
And why is that? You seem to have everything worked out on your laptop there. Is it you're just not really big on giving conspiracy talks? Is that it?
No, I love talking. It's just an irrational fear that somehow during my talk everything is going to go completely wrong at one point for no reason whatsoever.
I guess we could equate it to an exam when you finish with some extra time and you're very tempted to go back and change answers that are probably correct.
Yes, no, it's precisely the same thing. So I'm going to perhaps go through my talk and change words around and use Microsoft Word synonym feature.
Oh, okay, cool.
Just to appease my irrational nervousness.
Oh, okay. What's a good word? Try and put the word eponymous in there. I don't know what it means. It's used a lot in music. I just say, that's very eponymous, and people normally stop talking to me.
I don't know what it means either, but I promise.
And neither do any of the bloody reviewers in the NME that use it. Oh, that's their eponymous album.
I'll put eponymous in there, and I'll make sure it's in the least logical spot possible.
Cool. Now, you're going to talk about, we looked at the A to Z of conspiracy theories there to open here. I'm on board with most of them, basically. Pretty much that was just like a truth lecture I just saw there. What are the ones that you think they left out that there should have been a bit more time spent on?
I think conspiracy theories around climate change are particularly interesting. Of course, I like the wind turbine conspiracy theories, but I would say that. With regards to climate change, there's a lot of conspiracy theories about scientists faking research and hiding emails, and probably recall the Climate Gate thing, which became
to the climate gate. Yes,
it became a gate pretty quickly. Usually, there's a 2-week gate delay, but Climate Gate.
I've actually gone for leaks now, like with the WikiLeaks thing. Like there's the Maynard leaks, all that sort of stuff. You just stick leaks on the end of something.
I'm old school. I'm a gate fan.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And that one did go to the top.
It did. Yeah. I mean, straight to the alien overlords that are controlling.
Right. Well, what one do you think they could have spent a little bit more time on, apart from the climate one? The climate one for me has always been very difficult because it's so broad, and it is one of the ones where if you're really going to get into an argument about it, you've got to have specific knowledge of a client scientist if you really want to knock it down, I find.
Yeah, look, I think the one that you mentioned before, which is fluoride.
I love the fluoride, and it's got traction here in Australia.
A lot of the memes that you see in sort of fluoride hysteria rock up in the world of wind turbines, surprisingly as well.
Well, just within the last few months, one of the podcasts I listened to, RiAus Radio, they had someone who's anti-fluoride on that, and they were trying to, they were getting a correlation between the amount of fluoride in the water and lack of bone density and that kind of thing. Now, is there anything double-blinded tested to even prove that even once?
Do you mean with wind turbines or with fluoride specifically?
We'll get to the wind turbines through the fluoride thing. So is there any actual double-blinded, repeatable test that has any connection between fluoride in your water and bone density?
I don't think so. I'm pretty I have looked into this before, not rigorously, but I didn't come across any research that would relate it to bone density. But I think what you sort of said there is a really good example of the motivated finding of correlations. People really, really want to find a linkage between two things, and what often happens is people turn to weak evidence to establish that correlation, and sometimes no evidence. So it's pretty interesting. That's my suspicion in terms of what's happened in that case, but I don't know for sure, and we'd have to look at the research.
Now, I'm looking forward to your talk about wind syndrome, which has nothing to do with diet. I thought it would be a diet thing, but it's got to do with wind power. What do you think is you'll be pointing to evidence that's non-existent. Where is the evidence that is really weak, that they've latched onto, where there is a grain of something?
Yeah, there's a few things actually, and to be honest, you have to be really, really careful, because there are bits of research that are well conducted, that are rigorous, and they find a weak trace of something, but it's not strong evidence. So not only do you have to look at the kind of the wacky pseudoscientific stuff, you have to look at the stuff that seems like it's strong evidence and is touted as strong evidence, but then you have to have the ability to judge whether or not the things that are indicated by that one paper or two papers are strong indicators. So just to give you an example, there's a paper out of, I think it's Wisconsin, that came out recently, and they measured infrasound at a bunch of homes, and infrasound is super, super low frequency noise, so below 20 hertz, and they measured that. And they also gave questionnaires to people and said, how do you feel? Do you feel sick? Do you feel fine? How's it going? And they get their measurements, they get the questionnaires with all the timestamps on them, and they put them together and they go, oh my God, when there's more infrasound, people are feeling, nausea and headaches and stuff like that. Now, it was a very, very small sample size. The area has a high sort of propensity for anti-wind activism. The study was widely sort of advertised. So that's not pseudoscientific in and of itself, but you have to consider the strength of the evidence at the same time. So in addition to all of that pseudoscientific stuff, there are a few little bits and pieces of stuff that you could actually feasibly say count as rigorous scientific analysis, but reach weak conclusions.
And have you had a really knockdown, in-your-face argument with people on the conspiracy side with the wind argument there? And do you go down that? Do you spend a lot of time like Dr. Rachie over there? Right now she's having an argument with someone on the Health Ranger website. I can tell that. Did you throw yourself out like she hasn't slept since 1987?
Yeah, I do actually. And it really depends on my mood. If I'm feeling ragey and irrational, then I just... I'll go to some website and I never use a fake name. I announce who I am. I tell them, what I do for a living, and I have at them, and they have at me. And it's my intentions aren't always honourable. Sometimes I'm doing it because I'm in a bad mood and I feel like arguing with somebody.
Look, I'm always sending photos of my genitalia to people around about 11:30 at night. Do you think there should be a thing that you shouldn't get involved with people on a forum after 11:30 at night? Do you think that should be the rule?
Well, I haven't involved my genitalia in any of these discussions.
I go straight to that. For someone with you who's actually been to university, you should probably ramp up to it, take it over an hour or so.
Yeah, maybe one day I'll consider the pros and cons of doing that.
But sometimes you just want to look. Don't be a dick here.
Yeah. No, actually, well, I think I kind of know what you're getting at, and it's when you sort of reach the end of your tether, and you just go, I just want to do something completely out of the blue. I don't turn to that. I actually turn to cute animals. And if I'm having an argument and it's going nowhere and they're just like insulting me and they're not getting my point, I just start posting pictures of cute animals. And I was doing that last night.
You could get an internet law named after you. You could be the Nice Godwin's Law.
Yeah, Nice Godwin's Law. Yeah, no, we can come up for a name of the law right now. Yeah. Let's call it Joshy's Fluffy Law.
I think Joshy's Law is pretty good because that way it gets your name in there and you get your name associated with you because it is good. And actually, what actually happens when you do that? Is about or does it just shut the argument down? What usually normally happens?
It shuts the argument down because the argument has already been shut down to some degree. It's when people just stop trying to engage with what you're challenging them with, and they just start spouting like conspiracy theories or. They just insult you, or it just goes nowhere. And it's genuinely funny to see these people try and react to something that they're genuinely not expecting. Because when they insult you, they expect you to be offended and get angry and aroused with anger and just. But
like Dr. Rachie over there, look at it go.
But if you respond with a baby fennec fox, then they first of all they don't know what animal it is, and secondly they don't know why you're posting animal pictures, and it's just a wonderful way of just confusing the hell out of them, and you kind of win in a way. It's very peculiar.
Now you're obviously down with wind generation power. What about getting pushback from other renewable sources? People like do the thermal people or the tidal people come to you and going, "Hey, come on, you've got to look at thermal energy. It's the future, man."
Yeah. Well, I try to be my philosophy with other energy types, whether they're renewable or thermal, is none of them are evil, and you have to consider the benefits of each, and most of them actually do have benefits, including coal and gas. It's just that. You have to weight your usage of those fuel types according to their benefits, and currently it's skewed towards ones that are not as beneficial as other ones. So that's my philosophy. You just kind of have to shift it towards the other way. So if someone from geothermal came up to me and said, what are these wind turbines? It's geothermal. My response is always like, great.
Go for it.
Do it.
and what do you think is, because wind blows at certain times of the day, what do you think is the best solution for base load? Is it an improvement of large storage batteries of that size, or is it a mixture, for oil and gas and coal-powered plants?
Yeah, there's kind of three ways of looking at it. The first one is more like shorter term, which is making up for the times when renewable sources aren't generating with our current assets. So we've got coal assets, we've got gas, we've got hydro, and sorry, I always forget about hydro. Sorry, hydro.
Which is actually renewable, but it stuffs the environment in a different way.
Yeah, it's renewable in the strictest sense of the term, which is
it rains.
It rains. Yeah, the resource replenishes at a rate greater than which we use it. That's renewable. So that's kind of the short term. Longer term, hopefully batteries become more like, the cheaper, large capacity. There are a bunch of cool wind turbines going up in New South Wales soon that have batteries in them to smooth out the generation curve, which I think is pretty cool. There's kind of the third option, which is nuclear. And that is an interesting debate to me because it has parallels with a bunch of other energy just
fire it off. You just fire it off. Yeah.
The kind of the emotion and the tribalism and all that sort of stuff in the world of nuclear just fascinates me to no end. I don't get involved ever.
The whole thorium thing, that's a whole other thorny issue.
Yeah, it is a very thorny issue. And I'm fascinated by it from a social perspective, in how human beings consider technology and generation. So, yeah.
I think the best thing will be is if when you finish your talk this afternoon and they ask for questions that a couple of hands go off. And if no hands go up, I'll have to ask something about fluffy animals or something.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. No, animals do feature in my talk.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
I have a lolcat in there. So
now, I was told yesterday that wind farms in the US kill 40,000 birds a year. Now, is that just a figure plucked out of someone's salad roll, or is that actually a real thing?
It's that 40,000 a year figure varies every time I hear it, but it's actually it's not too inaccurate. It's not ever presented in the context of other generation types. Coal-fired power stations kill more birds than wind turbines do.
You never hear that just because of all the poop that comes out of the stack, or they get caught up in stuff, or
no, it's just collisions. It's just building collisions, and there's just
so if you built fan blades that didn't move, the birds would still run into that anyway.
It's quite likely, yeah. They collide with nuclear power stations. They collide with coal-fired power stations. They collide with buildings. They collide with cars. They get eaten by cats. The whole thing with wind turbines and birds is that what they take is a threat or a risk that exists, and they remove context, and then they exaggerate.
And they isolate it in exclusion to everything else.
Yep, and then they exaggerate it. And once you've done that, that's actually pretty much all you need. But as soon as you layer on an emotional context on that as well, when you sort of look at, say, rare birds instead, or the American eagle, or something that people feel a deep connection to, then you can stoke opposition without really having to have any analytical rigour behind it.
You mentioned cats kill birds. Well, maybe cats could power society. Because if you could harness the energy of random person who walked in, if we could harness the energy of cats, how much better off would we be?
I actually wish I had my my work laptop here, because I literally did a calculation about a year ago to determine cat equivalent wind turbine generation, and it was
But their paws are too small. No matter how fast you spin them, they're not going to get much.
It was cats on treadmills, and I took the walking speed of a cat and then the generation of a treadmill. It was in watts, and it was in the millions. A single 3 megawatt wind turbine running at full capacity is a few million cats on a treadmill. On multiple treadmills, obviously.
Well, I can just see that YouTube video of the million cats on the treadmill. Well, look, I've got your brain now into the right space it needs to be to go in and face a room of skeptics, I can tell.
I'm not on until 2:40. We've done this too early.
Well, there's a bottle of vodka over there. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't start now. And don't be scared if someone asks a dumb question to say there are no dumb questions, only dumb people.
I'm slightly terrified of the questions as well, because the audience is actually informed and intelligent, and that's always a horrible thing to have when you're doing a talk. You want ignorant and gullible.
Informed and intelligent. Also, it's also a bad one for humour as well. You know, if you're trying to tell jokes, and then you have to explain the joke to.
I know. No humour in my talk. Good. I'm completely against it.
Good. Okay. Well, if I'm laughing, you'll know why. Well, the Skeptics National Convention is underway. All the conspiracies have been named right on stage there. But shortly after that, we had a bit of a lack of internet and lack of power here and lack of air conditioning. What's going on?
I don't have the faintest clue, actually.
Yeah, it's a little bit suspicious that at a conspiracy conference there would be a conspiracy first up.
Well, we've already seen evidence that Bill Gates is monitoring us, so it's entirely possible that he had something to do with turning off the power remotely.
I certainly hope he's watching me nude on my webcam every night.
I really don't know.
Because I'm sending the image to enough websites, I hope he sees it eventually.
I really don't know what Bill's into, so, could be.
Now, you've been the first person that was revealed the secret code word that everyone who says this secret code to me gets a controversial and conspiratorial DVD. What did you say to me, sir?
I said, William Shatner's pants.
That's right. Anyone who comes up to me and says William Shatner's pants, the name of one of my favourite Australian bands, will actually get a DVD of an unknown nature that will become revealed later on in the show. But you've seen it, haven't you?
I've seen it. I've got it stuck on my finger at the moment.
Okay, well, we'll see how this goes. Now, what conspiracy are you looking forward to being unveiled here this weekend?
I've been thinking about the Kennedy assassination a lot over the past few months, as everybody else has, and I think I've uncovered something.
Oh, what have you uncovered?
Well, I don't know if you listened to Brian Dunning's latest Skeptoid podcast about...
Yes, indeed. All completely wrong, but anyway.
One of the things he brings up there is Vincent Biliosi's book, Reclaiming History, which claims to go through and debunk all of the conspiracy theories. And I've got a problem with that. The problem is I can't seem to be able to buy it. So I'm wondering whether the conspiracy that covers all of those theories is being hidden from us, so we can't buy that book, because if we bought that book, we'd find all the ones that don't work, and then we'd find the true one is the one not in the book.
So you've just successfully tied the name Brian Dunning into the JFK conspiracy. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Look, I'm just walking through the lunch break on the Saturday here at the National Skeptics Conference. I'm talking to Agent Smith, but which Agent Smith am I talking to this time?
I can't tell you that, I'm sorry.
You're just highly placed within the organisation.
Yes, I am, Maynard.
And mainly behind what's been going on here a lot.
Yes, I am. I correct that. It's been the team. The team has done all the work, so they deserve all the credit.
Actually, what's been the hardest thing about organising the Australian Skeptics National Convention in 2013?
Probably the program is always going to be the hard one. Getting the right mix and balance of people and topics, and obviously getting people here on time. That is the hardest factor of all.
Now, every group of skeptics have their sort of stamp of the way they do things. The Melbourne people have theirs, the Sydney people have theirs. What's the Canberran stamp on skeptics? Is there an issue that you guys are concerned about here more than elsewhere in Australia?
I wouldn't say there's so much of a specific issue, but we cover areas that are not traditionally covered by other skeptical groups. So, for instance, we've had Peter Lay, the former Chief of Army, come and talk to us. We've had people like Hugh White. We've taken advantage of places like the Australian National University, CSIRO, and really got to topics that aren't traditional skeptical things. So, for instance, we had Brett Biddington talk about Australia's role in space debris management. Okay. So very, very interesting topics that aren't the norm for the skeptical movement.
Yeah, and you have quite an active debate going too when you get them all there, because I've read the minutes of the meetings that you guys have, and they can get quite far. In fact, you had someone walk out of a climate change one once.
Yes, we did, and the person who gave that speech, Nick Ware, will be doing the same one again, but that was interesting.
And what do you think is the most interesting conspiracy theory that you've seen raised in your studies for this weekend?
Well, I think definitely the JFK stuff is the most interesting, simply because it's the most popular.
See, I've always been a bit of an outsider on that, because I've been a big fan of the Cubans doing it, and a lot of people are into the Cubans doing it, but I like that. I don't think they get enough respect from the JFK theory people.
Well, I thought it was the Russians.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought, or the mafia, or the FBI,
and that guy with the umbrella, maybe even more than we just thought. Sure, they explained him a couple of years back, but I don't believe that.
Well, there's an argument for everything. Everybody has their own view on what happened, but there's evidence. The evidence only points in one direction.
Now, there's a few skeptics things I've been to. I've been to TAM in Las Vegas. I've been to the Melbourne conference. I've been to the Sydney conference. I'm here in Canberra. Where's someone with a sandwich board? Where are the other people coming to protest what's going on here? I haven't seen any of that. Any of the events I've been to.
I'm not that good an organiser, unfortunately.
Because we need someone coming along telling all these people here that they're the crackpots.
Well, maybe that's what we'll try for the next convention.
Now, what do you got planned for the dinner tonight? We've got the big skeptics dinner. We all know skeptics can eat and they can drink.
They can, but obviously because it's today, Australian time, it is the 50th anniversary of the first screening of Doctor Who, so the dinner, is going to be a Doctor Who themed one. Hopefully we'll see people dressed as their favourite Doctor Who characters.
Look, and of course I will be asking the central point, the main question in 50 years of Doctor Who of course is the unpopular Doctor. Now I believe that the unpopular Doctor in Wikipedia terms was the first or second one that followed Tom Baker. He was a Doctor Who that didn't mind a fight and was a little bit unlikable.
Okay.
Have you got an answer? Who do you think the unpopular Doctor is?
I don't have an answer for that one. I think I'll save the email deluge and not respond to that question.
Okay, well, look, congratulations on running the conference so well. Of course, it's only lunchtime on Saturday, but it's gone pretty well so far.
Yes, it has. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming.
Well, my name is Graham Wilson. My historical qualifications are basically that on behalf of the Australian Army History Unit, I have published 2 both popularly and critically well-received books on Australian military history, one of which is entitled Dust, Donkeys and Delusions, The Myth of Simpson and the Donkey Exposed.
I always thought that military history has a certain extent of propaganda in it. So when you were explaining the way that Simpson's myth has been grown up, I thought that would be something that's almost expected, because propaganda always comes into it, doesn't it?
Propaganda might be expected, but there is no reason for us to accept it as history. You know, they used it at the time for a specific reason, and we can recognise that reason. However, let's strip the propaganda away and look at the real story.
And I guess people have been saying that in some way you've been disrespecting the man by investigating this way. How do you react to that?
I make it quite clear that I absolutely respect, admire, and I even personally like Jack Simpson, as much as I can like someone who died 40 years before I was born. You know, I spent the better part of 11 years stripping away all of the layers surrounding him, and at the end of it I actually found a young man who I liked. I would have been quite happy to sit down to have a beer with Jack Simpson, and I admire him for what he did at Gallipoli. He did a very good job. He did a useful job. If that job had not been recognised as useful, it would have been he would have been told to stop doing it. And he paid the ultimate sacrifice. He paid with his life while he was doing that job. So I have the absolute utmost respect and admiration for Jack Simpson. If people can't see that, we have to file under the heading of it's their problem, not mine.
Well, you just did the investigation about how physically possible it was to do what he's been claimed he did.
Not only just that, but all of the other aspects of the story. You know, the Simpson myth is not just a myth. If we call it the Simpson myth, that is a myth of myths. There are a number of little myths or smaller myths that make up the bigger myth. And in my book, I examine all of these myths. Myths such as he was universally known at Gallipoli. No, he wasn't. We can prove that. A hush fell over the peninsula the day he was killed. No, we can prove that didn't happen as well. The myth that he had some sort of mystical affinity with animals. You know, we can throw that into question as well. There are all of these various myths, and in particular the myth that he was ever officially recommended for the award of the Victoria Cross, which he wasn't.
The way we use the word hero in Australia and Western culture, you can be in an illness, you can be in a sporting team, and of course it's used militarily as well. What makes you most uncomfortable about the use of the word hero sometimes?
Well, when I hear things like a tennis player is a national hero, no, you can call that person nationally admired, an admired person, a respected person, but there's nothing particularly heroic about going out on a clay court and lobbing a ball back and forth, whereas Simpson really was a quiet hero. He quietly went about his job every day for 24 days in a place that was incredibly dangerous, and he paid for his life doing it. He actually is a good definition of what the word hero should be. The media needs to suck back a little bit, step back and see that they're overusing some words and basically rendering them meaningless. I'm probably preaching to the choir here now when I say to you, Maynard, we live in a world of sound bites. And if you want to get your message across in maybe 20 seconds in a media clip, then you have to go for superlatives. It is unfortunate that happens. Words like hero have just about lost their meaning.
And of course, when we read history, there's bits that have to be left out of history, and you mentioned the people that don't get as much of a mention at Gallipoli, and that's the stretcher bearers.
Indeed. There are a number of diaries and personal recollections of other stretcher bearers. You read them both during the war and after the war, where they're a little bit annoyed at everything that's given to Simpson and basically nothing given to them, and they feel that their work, their sacrifice has been was overshadowed by this adulation of Simpson. Now, people didn't know any better, but I can understand where these guys are coming from. And I would hope that people would step back and take a look at the number of other stretcher bearers who were killed or maimed for life at Gallipoli. Death toll was somewhere in the region of 20 or 21 stretcher bearers were killed, and that doesn't count men who went home broken in body or in mind. They've been overshadowed, and I'd like to think that my book might help in redressing that a little bit.
What is one incident, other than the ones you have covered in your books, that we could just have one look at and go, well, that's something about Australian military history I didn't know, that most people wouldn't think about, or they could talk to other people about and spread the word?
During the Second World War, the Australian Army had 23 military prisons in Australia. How many people know about that? Although they weren't referred to as military prisons, because a military prison is a very specific sort of organisation, they're referred to as detention barracks.
Now, that does for our own men?
Not just our own men, under agreements with the other allied countries that were in Australia. I know that the 11th detention barrack in Fremantle, in the old Fremantle jail, had New Zealand and Dutch servicemen in it. Detention barracks in Sydney had American servicemen in them until the Americans set up their own system. There were Canadians held in detention barrack at Rachael, so they were for everybody.
And where would you even find information on that, Graham?
My next book.
Did you see that UFO sighting that made the news? What did that latest study about alternative treatments really say? Is this photo making the rounds real or a hoax? Doubtful News is a unique website featuring news about pseudoscience, the paranormal, anomalies, and questionable claims framed with a skeptical view. Come visit doubtfulnews.com every day for news about cryptozoology, conspiracies, shams, scams, and more. Follow us on Twitter at Doubtful News. Critical thinking is essential in assessing today's news. Doubtful News helps you decide, can you really believe this stuff?
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. I've come back up to the street. Well, I'm lying, ladies and gentlemen. I've been here all the time. It's just the magic of editing. Oh well, things you need not know. And coming up on next week's show, lots more from Maynard at the Australian Skeptics National Convention. And as ever, that mysterious element of the Skeptic Zone, which means I'm never quite sure what's going to be on the next episode. Interviews, insights, reports, all the things that you've come to expect. Now, before I go, a big special shout out to Brian Dunning and the family, who were in Death Valley recently, and in a couple of Jeeps there, and one of the Jeeps took a big tumble. Fortunately, no one was injured, but it was a big scare and horrible experience for Brian Dunning and the family. So my thoughts go out to him and the kids and Lisa. I'm so pleased that they're all well, but a nasty experience nevertheless. And if you don't listen to Skeptoid, you should. Anyway, from outside the State Library here in Macquarie Street, Sydney, this is Richard Saunders, signing off.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.